say something. I want to go back to a couple things that you touched on. When we talk about Ukraine, when we talk about the situation evolving in Syria, I think those situations were miscalculations by Russia. Because if Russia would have firmly intervened in Ukraine, I don't think it would have devolved in such a way that it has, and especially in Syria. And these two are interconnected because if you remove Russia from Ukraine and you remove Russia from the base that you just mentioned, and that was part of Ukraine in Crimea, and then you remove Russia from Syria, you literally have neutered Russia's naval potential, and she would not be a global power. She would be pushed back. And
Right. That's exactly the case, and that's why Russia did go into Crimea,
right,
and save Sevastopol. That's why they did go into Syria to protect the Assad, government from the depredations of the U.S. and their surrogate ISIS, or whatever you want to call it. So they did, maybe a little late in the game, but they did, they did do what needed to be done, So they did push back, when push came to shove,
But my point was this: I think they should have been more assertive and more aggressive from the start to stop the devolution of the situation. You think about this: if Russia wouldn't have called back the rebels in the eastern part of Ukraine, you would not have NATO on a daily basis in Ukraine.
No, I agree. I agree with you. I have no dispute with what you're saying. I think, Putin was, he was being cautious. He was overcautious.
Yeah.
The U.S. wouldn't have. The U.S. would have done what you're saying if they were in that situation. So yeah, that's what I'm saying. We try to portray Russia and China and Iran as aggressors, right? Well, we're the aggressors, and they're reacting to our aggression. They're reacting defensively. But I mean, during the time of the Soviet Union, they were much more prone to take the offense, so to speak. When they saw that, like we always talk, about the Hungarian Revolution and the Prague Spring. Well, those were CIA operations, in retrospect. We had infiltrated into Hungary back in '56. We had a whole, I don't know if you're familiar with, the what's it called? Glavio, I think it's.
Yeah, Gladio, Operation Gladio.
Yeah, Gladio. Yeah, so we had our people there, and they were infiltrating, Eastern Europe, and fomenting rebellions and whatnot. This Hungarian operation in '56 and the Prague Spring. Well, there were contradictions in those countries, no doubt about it, but we went in there and exacerbated the contradictions and tried to turn those countries against, the Soviet Union. But it was always a very small minority, who were in the leadership of those movements. And we tried to, pump them up as if they represented the entire population. But they were regime change operations, and the whole idea was to turn Hungary, Czechoslovakia, East Germany, to turn them against the Soviets and install our own people in their place. So this has been going on forever. But the Soviets, more or less along the lines of what you're saying, they went in there and put a stop to it, right? They sent their troops into Hungary. They sent their troops into Czechoslovakia. They sent their troops into East Germany. And oh my God, here in the U.S. and oh, how horrible, that there's the evil communists, going in and suppressing these popular revolutions or revolts. Well, that's the same narrative that you hear today, and we know it's a false narrative. But the Soviet Union. bit the dust due to, well, we can't get into that now. There's a whole set of reasons for that, but a lot of it had to do with, people, in the government there, sort of being, having their heads turned, and influenced by U.S. Western values and whatnot. But anyway, I'm not going to get into all of that. But yeah, so I think Putin is a little bit more cautious, and then not in this. Maybe he thought he's not in the position to challenge, the West, in the same fashion as his Soviet predecessors did. But I understand where you're coming from,
Because if you look at, and let's look at another situation. At the beginning of the Syrian debacle, or what took place in Syria, Russia had to know that the so-called uprising was staged by the West because they have intelligence operations all over the world. If they would have intervened and put in troops in the border between Turkey and Syria, Turkey would never have come in. And if they would have, behind closed doors, talked to Assad and say, make it look as though this is coming from you, to initiate the defense treaty that was put in place between Syria and the Soviet Union. And then Russia would have took over the skies. America would not go into any place where she does not have freedom to act over the skies. This would have limited the death toll in Syria, and it would have rebuffed America, because America is a nation, and so is NATO. The NATO nations, they're a nation that if you give a little bit, they're going to take a lot. If you don't push back with claws, they're going to scratch you. If you don't stand up to them, they're going to keep needling you. If Russia would have been more,
hey, I agree with you 100%. And I think the Russians, they just probably had cold feet. I mean, obviously that's the case. They didn't think that they wanted to push back. Maybe they had illusions about trying to reach some sort of accommodation still with the West. There's a whole bunch of people in Russia, Atlantists as they're called, right? Who still, they have a neoliberal mindset, and they want, to basically be allied with the West, right? That's a strong force in Russia that, Putin's not totally in control. There are these other forces there pushing back, against him maybe doing what you're talking about. So, we got to look at the internal situation in Russia politically as well. We try to make it out as if Putin's this autocrat, this dictator, but no, all these countries, they have their own internal the divisions and internal factions, and they're maneuvering and against each other. It's not as if the leader is has carte blanche to do whatever he damn pleases. There are all these countervailing forces that we in the Western media and politicians don't take any account of. So I think you gotta see what were what was the balance of forces in Russia at the time. It would have been better if they did as you say. I agree with that, but I don't think they saw it quite that way at the time. In retrospect, they might even agree with you now.
I was told by some sources that what they call "quote unquote" the fifth column was really at fault for Russia's delay, and they kept stalling Russia's intervention because the military wanted to go ahead with it. This is what I was told.
Yeah, right. Well, that
was against them, but but then when it looked as though Russia would lose their facilities in Syria,
right.
That's when the military pushed the fifth column to the side and put pressure on Putin to give the go ahead to act.
I agree. See, well, you call the fifth columnists, I call the Atlantists.
Yes.
Yeah, it's the same thing. And that's pretty much along the lines of what I've been saying.